Welcome back again to the Building HVAC Science Podcast. We have a repeat guest on today's podcast, and that would be Elena Day and her dad, Jordan Day. She was on the podcast back in 2022. It was episode number 70. We're up to episode 188 today. So in this episode, we'll be talking with Elena and Jordan, mostly with Elena. And she's a creator of a YouTube channel called Little Miss Fix It. And she's achieved some pretty remarkable feats at the young age of 12 years old, including recently passing the EPA 608 certification test, possibly making one of the youngest certified HVAC techs. Jordan talks about how he supports Elena by letting her safely experiment and learn with tools and just continues to fuel her curiosity. And I want you to listen closely for the end of the episode where Elena shares her advice to listeners, and I think it's some of the best advice that I've heard on this podcast. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Elena and Jordan Day, talking about Elena's journey to EPA certification at age 12.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Building HVAC Science Podcast. Eric Kaiser here. Bill Spohn virtually over there. Of course, you guys are all listening to this on audio, so it doesn't matter where we're at. We've got two special guests with us today. They run a channel on the YouTube called Little Miss Fix It, and Elena Day and her dad, Jordan Day. Elena, I think, is the star of this channel, as I understand it. So welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having me too.
So Elena, you're back again. We did this before. Was it maybe a couple years ago?
Yeah, I think it was like when I was around 9 or 10.
What's your age now?
Yeah, I'm 12. I'll be 13 this summer. So.
Wow. So what's happened in between the last time and we talked to you now, like the major things that have changed?
I actually ended up passing my EPA test.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry, EPA I think is the company.
ESCO Institute.
Yeah, ESCO Institute.
Use the ESCO test to get your EPA 608 certification?
Yeah.
Nice.
How much study time did they require for you to prepare for that?
We did one lesson a day for like a month because we used, I think it's the ESCO Institute learning program.
Yeah.
I forgot what it's exactly called, but.
Yeah, that sounds right. They make a nice program for people to learn the rules and the needs of the EPA 608 certified technicians, that's really cool. Are you the youngest person to ever get that?
I think I might be because the other youngest person my dad's found was also my age because he saw it on Reddit, but we don't know if it's true or not.
Got it.
So other than that, I'm probably the youngest person.
Very cool.
Congratulations.
What are you going to do with that now?
When I get older, I think I might want to be an HVAC tech because I do think it's interesting.
What have you seen or experienced that makes you think it's interesting? What situations you've been in?
I've learned about, I think it's called the inches of mercury for like the vacuum. I got to learn how inches of mercury work and how it's actually measured, and I thought that was neat.
How do you learn this stuff? Where do you come across the information to learn about it?
That learning program, I think it was the ESCO Institute learning program, and then I'd see something, and then I'd ask my dad, what do they mean by inches of mercury? And then we'd watch some YouTube videos on it, and he'd explain it to me.
That's pretty cool. And we should introduce your dad, Jordan. Welcome back again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
How was the learning experience with Elena getting ready for the 608?
It was slower paced than I guess I had thought it might be at first. It's because she had so many questions, like she just mentioned with the inches of mercury. And I could try to explain it, and I was like, I think a visual would help. So let's find something good on YouTube that will give a good visual explanation of what atmospheric pressure actually is. And of course, as soon as she got it, she's like, okay, I got it. Let's move on. But we wouldn't get into it very deep before she'd have another question, which let me know she's really absorbing this because she's internalizing it and asking. She's coming up with questions that's not in the material. So as she's thinking deeply about it.
Elena, where do you think that comes from? Are you curious about other things in science outside of the HVAC and mechanics end of things?
So I do also like science a lot because when I was younger, I thought about being a scientist and stuff. Because I like learning about like the inches of mercury stuff and like atmospheric pressure and stuff.
We had mentioned just before we started, talked a little bit about programming and stuff, and you had said that you like to be more present with the equipment. What kind of experience have you had like over the last few years with equipment?
I'll remember one of my YouTube videos a while ago with I think it was the oxyacetylene torch. I like stuff like that. I like fire and sparks and stuff. I thought about doing welding one time.
Oh.
That's a lot of fire and sparks sometimes also. So yeah. What really got you interested in working with more of the, we'll say, technical trades type things, Elena? I'm really curious about that because it's not often that we see people of your age, young people, really interested in doing hands-on like that.
So when I was younger, I used to think building wood and carpenters, that how it was cool how they could build stuff out of wood. And when I was younger, I used to build little things out of Legos or something because I've always liked creating things and building things. And then I learned about trades, how there's plumbing, electrical, and all these other categories, and how you can, if you put them all together, you can make something really big and awesome.
That's amazing that you're thinking that way. I think that's really cool. What drew you to HVAC? What made you really think about that?
At first, my dad taught me a while ago how the HVAC cycle and the refrigerant, the cycle of it. And yeah, it was a while ago, but then my dad told me if I could pass the EPA test. He said it sarcastically. He said he'd pay me $200, and I took it serious. So when I passed the test, I said, "Can you get me chickens instead of $200?" So now we have chickens in our backyard. But now, since I've studied HVAC stuff, now I realize how actually interesting it is.
It is pretty interesting. And it's funny that you mentioned being a scientist as well, because HVAC is actually really science-based. So to do something with your hands and enjoy the science behind it, HVAC is a really great choice for blending those two specialties together.
Do you follow anybody in particular, any other YouTubers that you find interesting?
I don't think so. I know that when I want to learn something, like if I want to learn more about a type of electronic, my dad, he'll be watching, I think it's called the Engineering Mindset, and then I'll watch some with him.
Those are really good.
Yeah, Engineering Mindset is an awesome channel. Have you ever watched any of the other HVAC YouTubers like HVAC School or AC Service Tech, any of those channels?
I think I might have seen a video from HVAC School when I saw my dad watching it. So I know I watched it with him. So I think I've seen one of those videos.
So you got chickens in exchange for passing an exam. I think that's one of the most unique graduation gifts I've ever heard. So you actually did have chickens. Are they in your yard?
Yeah.
How many did you get?
We got 6.
And how long ago was that?
I think they're 6 weeks old. That means we got them 4 weeks ago, because at Tractor Supply, they were 2 weeks old, and it's been 4 weeks from then, so now they're 6 weeks old. So we got them around 4 weeks ago.
And what's your goal with having chickens?
I want them to lay eggs, because my family, we eat a lot of eggs. And we also want to give some to our friends and family.
That's so kind of you. And so people know generally where you're at, like where the weather's at, where you live, where you located, what area?
Yeah, just above Atlanta, like northern Georgia.
Have you ever had a chance to go out and actually work on any HVAC work, equipment around your house, neighbors?
One time, in one of my videos, we actually created a mini HVAC unit that actually worked.
We got to learn more about what that is. How would you describe the mini HVAC unit? They had a condenser, evaporator, compressor?
Yeah, we had a condenser, an evaporator, a compressor. Oh yeah, it was like a metering device.
Sure. That would be the last part, the last major part, sure. How big is it? Does it fit on a desktop or?
It was like on a piece of plywood. I'd say it's about 2 feet by 2 feet or 4 feet by 4 feet, somewhere around there.
Okay. And it actually worked? Did you test it?
We put our hand, when we turned it on for cold air, we put our hand where it was blowing, the air was coming through, and the air was actually colder than the room temperature.
Good. You made cold air.
So I see, Elena, that in some of your videos that you're doing stuff with different actuators and some building automation equipment as well. And looking here in the video at Jordan, it looks like he's got some building automation equipment over his shoulder there on the wall. Have you done any programming or anything with that as well?
I have done some programming in my latest videos. I plan on my future videos being like maybe building stuff like more hands-on maybe. Because I did actually get a 3D printer for my birthday, so I might want to make a video on how that works.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. You can do a lot of stuff with 3D printers. Do you have any plans on anything specific you're going to make?
I think I might want to make one of those, because I'm also very interested in planes and stuff. I might want to be a pilot, but I almost want to be like an HVAC tech and a pilot at the same time. I might want to print one of those mini, what's the word? It's like a plane engine, and you can take it apart and put it together to see what makes it function.
Very cool. I think you could definitely be a pilot and an HVAC technician at the same time. I think you can do that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
You could do work in remote areas where you could only fly to them.
That's true. There's a business plan for you. Do you think that would be doable, like fly around everywhere and fix everybody's air conditioners?
That sounds fun because I get to do two things. I like to do HVAC stuff, and then I also like to travel at the same time.
Awesome. So how much time are you spending with this kind of stuff? And you go to school, of course, so you have to balance that out.
Sometimes I think I do it more on the weekends when I have more free time, when my dad's watching like educational videos from like HVAC school and the learning mindset, and I'll watch them with him, and then I'll ask him questions about the video, and then he'll help me answer the questions.
You said you're going to do more hands-on in your future videos. Do you have thoughts on what those things might be, those projects might be?
I think I might want to do a welding video, and then maybe a video where I'm like building something out of wood, but not like something small, but like something bigger.
One thought just occurred to me is, ever seen those walking sculptures? Those beach walking sculptures?
I don't think so.
Oh, you got to look it up. They make kits now for them. It just relies upon the wind on a beach, and they look just like giant creatures, but they actually move. A machine walks without a motor. It just uses the wind energy.
Oh, wow.
So I had a thought there when you said that. It sounds like you have an air conditioning system, and maybe you need a house to go with it. Don't hate me, Jordan. I'm just throwing out ideas here. But if you got a spare air conditioning system around, you might as well put it in a house. So you just build a small house.
That gives me an idea. We could actually put it in our chicken coop, because my dad built our chicken coop, so we could try to put it in our chicken coop, maybe.
Jordan is hiding now.
Better make sure you cover the fan blades. Make sure that no little chicks get into them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that could be bad.
Put some good filtration in there, too.
So I imagine the things that you're doing, and your dad talks about you a lot on LinkedIn and stuff, it must have attracted other attention. Have you done other interviews or talked with other people?
Not recently, but there are some people that want me to be in like their podcast or interview. There are some other people that I plan on being on the podcast on the future, so maybe like 2 months from now or something.
And by the way, thank you for making the time, and Jordan for arranging the time, because I know you had to fit in with our workday and with your after school and that kind of thing. So thanks for making the time to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the HVAC School Symposium down near Orlando, Florida?
I don't think so. Is it kind of like a HVAC college?
It's an annual event that happens, and it's realistically a bunch of HVAC nerds that get together and have a 2-day conference, and we talk about different things, and there's different topics that happen. It's not too far south of you guys. Might have to be something you think about coming down to one of these years.
I'll drop a link in the chat there, Jordan, if you want to hit on it. Last year, we met a young man named Atlee, who was a follower of Chris Stevens. I don't know if you follow any Chris Stevens videos, HVACR videos.
Yes.
Okay, so Atlee is a big follower of his. I think last year, this past February, Atlee was 12, so almost same age as you, Elena. And he knew a lot about a lot of things. He was very impressive. So this seems to be like a trend here going on. He's from Florida. He lives real close to Orlando, where that is. But other young people are getting involved in this industry in different ways. And he came to the symposium too.
That's cool.
Something you'll appreciate, Bill, is Elena has become very passionate about clean, sustainable energy.
Oh, really?
And just topics that they had covered in her class at school, she came home talking about them. I said, well, HVAC, because those components use so much energy, is very closely tied to the efficiencies of those systems, are very closely tied to clean energy and sustainable energy. Like, they're very much tied together.
Yeah. So you have any questions for us, for Eric or I? Because that's something that we're really into too, is energy efficiency in houses. And I have a solar powered house and electric vehicle, and I'm happy to answer any questions for you. You can flip the tables here, make it your podcast.
So I do have one question. Do you plan on making anything else solar powered other than, have you ever thought about inventing a solar powered car?
Actually, my car does have solar panels on the roof, but right now you can't generate a lot of power from the size of a car's roof. So it's limited by the output of the solar panels. You could collect it, but it would have to be over a long period of time. So it isn't something that can sustain continuous driving. The solar panels on my car have added 100 miles in about 11 months. So 100 miles of range. So that's not very much. That means you wouldn't be able to use your car at all. But the solar panels we have on the ground cover a lot more area, probably 700, 800 square feet in a ground array. And they're collecting energy all day long, even when it's not and when it's cloudy and stuff. And so that actually goes onto the grid, and then we get to pull it back off the grid because we put it on the grid. So it's putting money in a piggy bank and then withdrawing it. I use that to charge our car, and we've stayed net zero. We've made more energy since we lived here than we've actually consumed. So I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Wow, that's cool. I've always liked solar power, and then I think it's called hydropower and geothermal. I think those are the words. Because I want to try to go away from those big fans that spin in the sky. I forgot what they're called, because I know that sometimes they can kill birds when birds crash into them.
I think you might be referring to wind power.
Yeah, wind power.
And actually, was it 2 weeks ago, Eric? We had a guest on who's inventing a new wind turbine.
Yeah, the Harmony turbine. It's a completely different looking wind turbine. If it's a horizontal scoops, I guess would be the...
Yeah, horizontal scoops on a vertical axis.
Yeah, and they're phased all the way around in a circle, so there's always a scoop that's pushing it around in a circle. It's pretty neat. That episode drops here pretty soon, I think.
Or did it already drop?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that came out already.
Oh, that came out already. Yes, you're right, it did.
Yeah, that was on the 13th of September. So you'd find it in our podcast archives if you want to hear from Chris and Cheryl Moore and how they're working on that, their invention there of wind power. So people are inventing things. Have I thought of something like that? I've thought about it. Am I doing something? No. Are other people doing something? Yes. That's the fun thing, is connecting with people who are doing things like that.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time and effort to invent something and then actually get it out into production. Sometimes forming the base idea is the easy part, but making that product and getting it into production, it takes years sometimes. I think Chris said he started on his design in 2018 or 19, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly, when they really started formalizing things on that. So it's taken them a while to get that out, and they still don't have anything really out to market. They're still in their testing phases.
Do you have any water near you where hydropower would be something you could try out?
There is a lake, because we live on a hill, and then there's woods going down the hill on the left side of our house, and then there's a lake. But the only bad thing is that lake is actually a private lake, so we couldn't really build anything on it without getting the owner's permission.
Got it.
You could play around with that even in something as simple as a downspout. So if you take a downspout and you catch that water in a barrel, and then you trickle that water out of that barrel and turn a small wheel with it, you could start small and see how much electricity you could generate with something like that. It might be an interesting experiment to see what you could do, especially if you have a hill.
Yeah, because it's the difference in height that would generate the power, because you're really harnessing gravity. Any other ideas you got for inventions?
I think I want to try to invent a car that runs on water or something.
Oh,
Or something other than gasoline.
got it.
Or an alternative for oil. Water instead of oil for certain things.
That would be a neat invention because we got a lot of water around.
Yeah. Do you have other kids in your school who have similar interests? Maybe not as advanced as yours, but similar things like this? Like in mechanics and trades and things like that?
I know my friend Naomi. She's in the robotics program. So it's basically a program where it teaches you how to code and stuff.
Yeah. One of our team members at TrueTech Tools, Josh Crawley, his kids are in the robotics team, and his son's team actually made it to the World Finals in Houston this past April. So they made it all the way through the locals in the state of Ohio to represent there. So I know I've seen a lot of pictures. Sometimes I should visit their lab where they're working on it, but that's great to hear.
That's cool.
Do you think you're being like a role model or getting other kids interested? They ever talk to you about saying that you've made them think about things differently?
I don't think so. Some kids at school know that I've passed the EPA test, but I don't know if it's motivated them at school or not.
Got it. Your experience is so unique. Your journey's so unique. It would be hard for somebody to appreciate it, except for people like us. And hopefully people like our listeners too.
In that vein, I've got a question for Jordan. What's it like? To me, it's not normal that I see a lot of kids interested in this. How do you help Elena grow, and what things do you do to help her with learning about the trades and things like that? What's it like as a parent to do that?
I try to allow her to do anything she wants to do. So if I'm using a tool, it doesn't matter if it's a skill saw. There's that protective parent inside of me that says, no, you'll cut your hand off and then I'll feel guilty. But then the other side of me is I'm going to die one day, and the only thing I can leave her with is my knowledge. So I try to teach her safety and how to do these things, whether it's a torch, a chop saw, a skill saw, a drill, whatever. Go over some basic safety with her and make sure that she's got the strength and the coordination to do it, and then to let her do it, even if I'm a little uncomfortable with it. But I think that's the best thing we can do, is let kids do the things that they want to do initially, because eventually I think they grow out of that. About the time they get 15, 16-year-old, they're not quite as interested in helping dad with saws and drills and stuff. So while they're interested and while they really want to help, let them help.
And I'll assure listeners that you do follow all the proper safety protocols and just provide a lot of explanation, I'm sure, for Elena.
Absolutely. Safety glasses, hearing protection, the whole 9 yards, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great. And that's something to learn about. What would you recommend to other parents if their kids are interested in this, or maybe have questions about mechanical things or about doing things with their hands, but the parents maybe don't have the skills or the tools or something like that, depending on where they live, if they don't have the space or the situation, or maybe they hadn't been exposed to it over their life? Do you have any recommendations for other parents?
I would recommend reaching out to someone who does know how to do it. I'm not a welder, but my wife's ex-boyfriend is, and I have no problem reaching out to him saying, hey, my daughter would really like to learn how to weld, TIG welding, it really stainless steel, advanced stuff that I can't just stick together. She'd like to learn how to do it right. So reach out to someone who knows how to do it, because people in the trades, they're usually happy to teach someone else that's eager to learn, someone who's interested. I've not met very many people at all that were not willing to teach.
There's a few of them out there, but I would tend to agree with you. By and large, most people are willing to share their knowledge, which I think is really cool.
Yes.
Elena, what would you want to tell the listeners out there, the listeners to our podcast? What are your closing thoughts? What's the inspiration you want to leave them with? Something that you've learned or proven about yourself?
If you have a dream and it ends up not turning out what you really want to do or something, keep searching for things that are like that, because you'll find something that you are interested in. So if you have a dream, just don't give up on it and keep on walking towards it. If you want to pass the EPA test and that's one of your dreams, just keep on walking towards it and never give up.
That's probably the best closing statement we've heard from any guest here.
I'm done now.
Follow your dreams.
Where's my mic to drop?
Thank you so much, Jordan and Elena, for joining us on the podcast. And maybe we'll check in again in 2-3 years, see what's going on, see if some of your inventions have come true and where your curiosity and your mind take you.
Thank you for having us, Bill and Eric.
Thanks for coming on. And I'm just going to throw out to the listeners, go on and check out Little Miss Fix-It on YouTube. I'm going to be a new subscriber today. Never heard of it before. You just got another one.
Yep. Thank you, Elena. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. We appreciate you listening to the Building HVAC Science Podcast. We've been trying to do this thing for a few years here, since 2017, ever since Brian Orr said, hey, Bill, you should do a podcast. So, hey, look what he started. I'm so happy to have Eric Kaiser joining us in the last year or so. The Building HVAC Science Podcast is a production of TrueTech Tools Limited. And full disclosure, I'm an owner of TrueTech, and the opinions voiced are those of my guests, my co-host, or myself, depending on who's speaking, of course. And if you're in the market for any tools or test instruments, TrueTechTools.com. Take a look, TrueTechTools.com, and you can use the offer code HVACBS for a nice discount. Hope you got something out of this episode, especially the closing thoughts that Elena gave us. Take a look at the show notes. You can find a link to her YouTube channel, and you can find Jordan's LinkedIn profile, where he does a lot of interesting things and commentary on his own too. So the apple didn't fall very far from that tree. Thanks for listening to this episode, and take care until next time.